Well, it looks like the war between India and Pakistan has begun, which is not great for anyone, to say the least, especially because this is an active fight between two nuclear-armed nations. And unfortunately, in that case, you have to have in the back of your mind that should this continue to escalate, that is a possible direction the fighting could go, the actual use of nuclear weapons. Now, what we're going to talk about today is what led up to yesterday's attack, the details of the attack that we know so far, including speculation that 2, maybe 3 Indian fighter jets were shot down by Pakistan. I mean, this was a serious event last night. And then, of course, we'll talk about what to watch for today and going forward. So what we know so far from yesterday's event is that it's called Operation Tindoor, was launched by India into Pakistan. They say 9 terrorist camps and facilities were struck, with 4 in Pakistan and 5 in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. They say each one of those locations was linked to one of 3 militant organizations, either Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, or Hizbul Mujahideen. And we've got some maps here that I'll put up by Damian Simon over on X. I'll link his profile as well. I think does a really good job of showing exactly where these attacks took place. And just to reiterate, these were inside of Pakistan. Some inside of Kashmir, but some inside of Pakistan itself. Now, as a little background of what led to this, we have to go back to, well, we could go back quite a bit further, but this most recent series of events really began on April 22nd, 2025, when a terrorist attack near Pahalgam in Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir killed 26 civilians and injured more than 20. The attackers in that case targeted non-Muslims, selecting victims based on their religious identity, and the resistance front linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba initially claimed responsibility for this attack, but later retracted it. Right out the gate, India accused Pakistan of sponsoring the attack, and it turned out that 2 of the suspected militants were identified as Pakistani nationals. This led to pretty significant, understandable outrage across India, with Prime Minister Modi vowing to identify, track, and punish anyone who had any responsibility for this attack. Right in the immediate aftermath, we saw a diplomatic breakdown, with India and Pakistan expelling each other's diplomats, suspending visas, and withdrawing from long-standing agreements between the 2 nations. There was also a spike in military tensions. Starting on April 24th, we saw skirmishes along the line of control intensify, small arms fire mostly, and then Pakistan did test some ballistic missiles on May 3rd, while India continued conducting military drills. And then on April 28th, just a couple days ago, Pakistan's defense minister claimed that an Indian attack was imminent and that they should expect something in the next 36 hours. Of course, looks like he was off by a little bit there, but correct in his assessment that an Indian attack was coming. And then yesterday, we got an announcement from the Indian military confirming this attack, and I'll play a couple different videos here. Some of the attack taking place, and also India released like hype film at the same time in English, so you got to kind of recognize who the desired audience might be there. But India put out a statement saying, quote, Operation Tindoor, Indian armed forces carried out precision strike at terrorist camps. A little while ago, the Indian Armed Forces launched Operation Tindoor, hitting terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, from where terrorist attacks against India have been planned and directed. Altogether, 9 sites had been targeted. Our actions have been focused, measured, and non-escalatory in nature. No Pakistani military facilities have been targeted. India has demonstrated considerable restraint in selection of targets and method of execution. These steps come in the wake of the barbaric Pahalgam terrorist attack, in which 25 Indians and 1 Nepalese civilian were murdered. We are living up to the commitment that those responsible for this attack will be held accountable. Now, a key portion there that we're going to come back to in a minute is you can see that India goes out of their way to say, we only went after terrorist infrastructure. We did not target any Pakistani military facilities. Keep that back in mind when we talk about what the next steps could be and how this could possibly escalate. Now, getting into the details of the attack, this is where it really starts to get murky. And as soon as reports started coming out yesterday, it was just a minefield of mis and disinformation, 5, 6, 7-year-old footage coming out, old pictures, just a complete mess, trying to understand in real time what was taking place. I think we've got a pretty good idea now, but just tread with caution. I mean, I love that you're all here watching this video, but take what I'm saying with a grain of salt as well, because it's a very, very confusing information environment, not like anything we've seen in Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, anywhere else, quite frankly. The deliberate misinformation from like senior leaders in each government is very hard to sift through. Nonetheless, what we believe happened at this point is that the attack was carried out with a series of different weapons types. Definitely some drones, look like some drone drop munitions, some loitering munitions. It'll be interesting to see how this fight adapts to what we've seen play out, especially between Russia and Ukraine. It does look like some Scalp cruise missiles were utilized in this attack, long-range, high-precision missiles, either deployed from Rafale jets or surface launch platforms. There also appeared to have been some AASM Hammer smart bombs, so precision-guided munitions targeting bunkers and multi-story buildings. India, for their part, has claimed that all 9 targets that they went after were successfully destroyed, saying they inflicted significant damage to the 3 terrorist organizations and their infrastructure and disrupted their ability to plan and execute attacks going forward. But they don't give a specific number of terrorists that were killed. Pakistan does get into the details. Again, the official government stance here is that 26 civilians were killed and 46 injured across multiple sites. That includes 3 children and 7 women, at least, that were killed. Now, Pakistan does not break out that any of those were terrorists. They also do not break out, they just say civilians, right? So definitely not military. I guess Pakistan recognizing that these were not military personnel, but not labeling them the same as India did, terrorists belonging to one of these 3 organizations, which, to be fair, I don't believe any of those are recognized as terrorist organizations inside of Pakistan. Now, Pakistan, in response to this, it does look like they carried out artillery shelling along the line of control, which they say killed 3 Indian civilians. They say killed 3 people in India. India says, though, that shelling resulted in 10 deaths and 32 injuries. Again, you're seeing these immediate, pretty significant discrepancies in the claims. So take it all with a grain of salt. We'll wait a couple days to see if this information becomes more clear, but it's very much a he said, she said type situation at this point. And that carries over to the possibility of aircraft losses. The minute that attacks started yesterday, we started hearing reports. There was video game footage for the first time in a while being released and people running with it. That's the degree of misinformation out there right now. But there have been a fair number of reports that Pakistan shot down 2 to 5 Indian fighter jets, including 3 Rafales. India's denied this, and it's been all over the place. There were some publications that printed, we've got some videos and pictures that I'll share here that, from what I can tell, are authentic and appear to show some sort of aircraft that has been brought down. I'm not an expert in the sift, the OSINT guys that can sift through this rubble and be like, look at that marking. That right there is from the 2021 version of the JDAM ER. I can't do that. So I'll leave that up to the experts. But this footage here and some of the pictures has been circulated and shown as proof that at least a couple of these jets were shot down. In Indian media, we saw a couple organizations say that they lost aircraft and then shortly thereafter retract that statement and say, no, it was an error, it was our mistake. So we don't know. There also is confirmed, from everything I've seen, a Pakistani JF-17 fighter that crashed in India. But it's not clear if that was as a result of this fighting or pilot error or related at all. Again, a lot of mixed information there. The New York Times, speaking to this, said, quote, one Indian official confirmed the crash of 3 aircraft, but cautioned that the reasons were not clear. 2 other Indian security officials confirmed the reports that some Indian aircraft had gone down, but would not elaborate on the details. And then Shashank Joshi over on X said, quote, we now have the New York Times citing an Indian official on 3 downed planes, Reuters citing local government sources on 3 crashed jets with the pilots in the hospital, the Hindu citing an Indian government official saying at least 3 crashed jets. He says, if this is true, these would be heavy losses for the Indian Air Force. So again, I think there were probably a couple of jets that went down last night. In terms of the number, the exact cause, wait to see more. But I think that kind of gives you an idea of just how confusing all of this is right now, which leads us into what to look for going forward. So the reactions here were as to be expected. The Indian Defense Minister and Indian Foreign Minister hailed the strike, saying that the world must show zero tolerance for terrorism. The Pakistani Prime Minister called the strikes an act of war and authorized the armed forces to carry out corresponding action in response to these strikes. And Pakistan did overall vow retaliation at a time and a place of its choosing. I've seen varied reports as I'm recording this the morning of, it's 9 a.m. Central, May 7th, 2025. I did see some reports as I was getting into this recording that Pakistan has begun their retaliation, but nothing more than words. So no reports of any actual attacks taking place. So But this is something that we should expect in the relative near term. So what we're looking for here, we expect Pakistan is probably going to respond. Most likely, they're going to try to manage the escalation ladder here and carry out some sort of attack that is comparable in terms of maybe the number of munitions that are used, the types of munitions that are used, maybe the number of targets they go after inside of India. If you really want full-blown escalation management, it's 1 for 1. What is an equal strike to what was just carried out? And you want it to be obvious and clear to anybody involved that it was a 1 for 1 type strike. That's what I think Pakistan will probably try to go for if they want to maintain this, if they want to maintain the status quo and not escalate this. So they might go after air bases or launch sites inside of India that were used in this attack. So you can see kind of the 1 for 1 example there. But we're going to have to wait and see how that's received, because even if that is the case, again, to go back to the Indian statement earlier saying we did not go after any Pakistani military targets, but it was the Indian military conducting those strikes. So for Pakistan to go back, it's going to be Pakistan targeting Indian military locations. So now you have the Pakistani military going after the Indian military, and the Indian military saying, hey, we just went after some terrorists. We specifically did not target Pakistani military locations. And for what it's worth, as of this reporting, there are no indications that either side's military bases have been attacked. There were some speculative reports yesterday, nothing to confirm at this point, and there's no indication that India deliberately targeted any Pakistani military locations. So that's a little bit of a concern I have, is even this 1 for 1 type response could be viewed by plenty of people inside of India and some leadership in India as a direct escalation and met with, an over-the-top punch in response. But essentially, that is what we know so far. There's still more than enough time for this to dial back and not escalate out of control. But of course, when we're talking about a hot war, active fighting with people being killed between two nuclear-armed nations, we really have to pay attention to this. But that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.